Hey there, welcome to Beauty and the Pom podcast. I'm Kiani Mills.
And I'm Andy Reid.
Two friends who have a very similar set of values, but who have taken very different life paths to end up in similar situations.
We are also business owners, parents, property enthusiasts, and bloody short on time. So we bring you this podcast to shine a light on humanising business.
Because look, let's face it, business is life, and life is business.
Beauty and the Pom podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back with us. Kay Mills, A. Reid, with you once again. Kiani, how are you going?
I'm really good, thank you. Hey, I love those little K Mills and A Reids. I reckon we should get some little T-shirts or something made with it on the back. I like that.
So that everybody that's listening can see it. Yeah, all right. That's or is it just for us to be like, you know, T-birds or something, like we're on Grease Lightning or something like that, like the Fonz?
Yeah. I love it. But no, I'm great. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Yeah. Look, it's I'm good. We're going through some decent changes from a business point of view, as is the case to everybody that's listening. We're all going to be going through some changes, but you know, with various little components of our lives and all that sort of stuff. And just so that you are all aware, everybody that is listening to us, we're not devoid of change, right? We're very much in the midst of change ourselves. And we're both going through a bit of change, aren't we, business-wise?
We are, yeah. It's the month for it seems.
Maybe we should start a podcast and talk about it.
That'd be a really great idea.
Wouldn't be bad, huh? Wouldn't be bad. Anyway, on to the topic of today's conversation before we start getting sidetracked, which we have a tendency to do.
Give me a number out of 10.
I'm probably a 7.3.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a bit happening. There's a bit going on. But at the same time, you know, there's a lot of hard work now that will hopefully result in some benefit down the track. So staying strong and hanging on to that optimism side of things. Staying strong and hanging on. What about you? What's your score on the door?
Well, first of all, that song, "The Only Way Is Up," baby.
I told you, team. I don't know if there's been many. We should do like a count of how many times Mills breaks into some sort of song, or we should just do a karaoke episode where we do the whole episode in song, right? How to piss off an audience in one fell swoop.
I don't know any listeners for that one, but it was relevant. The only way is up. So yes, there are good things. Yeah, likewise. It's been a pretty rough week in my world. It's funny though, there's been some amazing things that have happened. So for moments in time, I've been like a 9 and felt amazing. But because there's been some rough seas going on, it's interesting how the rough seas can be so much louder and so much more pressing than the moments in time where those 9s and 10s come out. So I think if we were to do an average, it's probably about a 6. It's been a rocky kind of thing going on. As I said, we've peaked to some 9s or 10s, but it's been a bit rough. But the only way is up.
I reckon when it comes to that, tracking our score out of 10 and having that little bit of reflection, I think it'd probably be worth us looking at maybe giving ourselves a couple of scores, right? So where, a micro score and then a macro score, because you're absolutely right. Ultimately, we wouldn't be able to experience the 9s and 10s if we didn't have the 2s and 3s and 4s, right? So but I think as long as our trajectory is heading in that sort of upward direction, right, a la your lovely 1980s rendition of, then I think that, I think it's worth us reflecting on micro versus macro so that it helps us to put those 2s and 3s and 4s into a bit of context. I reckon I probably need to make that shift, actually, in my thinking.
I love that, because you're right. It's life isn't linear. It's always going to be up and it's always going to be down, and there's going to be things that we need to contemplate. But yeah, if we can do it on a micro and a macro level, that may change the end result slightly.
No, man, at the end of the day, we need the dark in order to help the light shine, right? In order to notice the light, we need to see the shade. So
it's perfect. What you said was perfect. We can't experience the joy from the 9s and the 10s if we haven't experienced the pains from the 2s and the 3s.
100%.
So I am a grateful human, even though there was shit that went on.
Even though there was some bollocks that kicked off. Yes, absolutely. So let's crack on with today's episode before we start wasting everybody's time that little bit more. We're talking about paying attention to our ideal clients and making sure that we are in tune with our target market. Now, before we hit record, you went on a very short rant. Why don't you pontificate on said rant to get us started, Kay Mills?
Okay. So if I can remember correctly, I was referencing, in my mind, there are some areas in life, and because we do get so fixated on the goal or the end result or what it is that we are trying to achieve or create for our clients, that sometimes we get so much tunnel vision that we don't necessarily see what could be future clients in our peripheral vision. So, for instance, the example that I used was a real estate agent, especially when it's really, really, we're peak of the market, we're busy. Sales agents acting for a vendor, that is their client, their prerogatives to sell that house. Yes, that is the absolute purpose. So they're so focused on selling that house. But what I've seen and what I've experienced is that in their peripheral vision, they've got all of these buyers and all of these purchasers that are interested in potentially buying that house. And whether it's they're too busy or they've got so much going on, those buyers aren't really given the time of day. They're not given the consideration that potentially they should be or could be given, because that agent seems to be so focused on that end result. They forget that that purchaser, potential purchaser, whether they buy this house or another, is going to buy a house and going to need to sell said house at some point in time in the future. So if as an agent, and especially now, the market is a little bit slower than it was 12 months ago, giving those buyers time of day and a little bit more attention could be your future client somewhere down the track.
Yeah.
So I guess in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is pay attention to the little people, because it's the little people around the edges that are going to one day be your ideal client. And if you don't treat them well, then they won't be your ideal client and they will go somewhere else. But if there's anywhere that we can start to rummage up business for the future, it's with those people that are sitting on the edges at that point in time that may not be your focus, but could be.
I think it's a really, really good example of how when we are so super keen on hitting the outcome, we end up treating either our customers, if we're B2C, or or in this case, only one side of the equation. We don't treat the whole equation in the same way. And when we fall into that trap of treating our customers as commodities as opposed to human beings, it's that commodity versus human being thing, right? I think an easier example for everybody to help them understand was an observation I made when I was at Coles, right? I don't know about your local supermarket up there, Kiani. You'd probably go to some odd sort of health shop that's got heather in the front, window or some bullshit like that, old hippie, whatever it is, some sort of crap, incense in the front door. But when I was at Coles, I noticed this is one thing that's really bugging me about Coles is the vast majority of the checkouts now are self-serve, right? They're either self-serve in the little pod or they're self-serve with a little conveyor belt thing, right? And there's only, in peak time, just after work or whatever, they only generally tend to have like one or two human checkout people. Okay. Now it got me thinking when I was stood in a queue waiting for said human checkout person, because I kind of and a little bit because I think the stubborn pom kicks into gear at that stage. And I'm like, bollocks to you. I'm going to wait for the human. Thank you. But while I was stood in a queue a couple of weeks ago, it made me think, you know what? Coles will be talking about it as an efficiency play, right? And that's generally what a lot of businesses do. They will disguise the fact that they don't want to put an effort in with their customers as efficiency. And yeah, but when you think about it, right, because of the ease at which we can do online shopping and all the rest of it, I think that Coles have gone a little bit too far in treating their customers as cattle, as commodities, as opposed to providing that level of value, that level of give a shit, that would make people want to stay true or want to stay loyal to their brand, to their organization.
Yeah.
And they're always having supermarket bloody wars and all that sort of carry on, right? And I don't think they're helping themselves. And you make exactly the right point from a real estate point of view. Buyers are generally treated as commodities, as are tenants in the main, because they're not the ones that are ultimately paying our wages, paying our salaries and what have you. However, I mean, it's not just the primary thing of that buyer then becoming a client at some point. Who do they know? Like, you don't realize that a lot of these people, believe it or not, team, they tend to talk to other people. First home buyers that trying to buy a house and having a real rough time of it, right? Not only have prices gone through the roof, but now it's actually become harder for them to actually repay whatever it is that they want to try and buy, right? So they've kind of been hit twice, bless them. But do you not think that those first home buyers that are so nervous and intimidated by the process, do you not think that they will be bouncing ideas and experiences off parents, off friends that have been in the game, off more experienced people that might have an investment, that might be thinking of selling at some point, that might be ready to downsize and so on and so forth. And that's what I think that's what we really need to pay attention to, Kiani. Now, it all sounds very, very complicated, but you wanted to talk about the KISS principle, right? Keeping it very, very simple. How can we keep it simple when it comes to, keeping it mindful of those clients in that target market? I
think the important part for me is there in both of those scenarios, what's lacking is the human factor. So it's the human to human factor. And this is where if we go back and we go, let's just take away all the confusing crap that we've just mentioned in the last couple of minutes and keep it really, really simple. It is if you go into any interaction with the mindset that any person you come across, any person you speak to could be your customer. Treat them as if they are your customer. And so long as we treat our customers well, we're leaving them with a good impression. We're leaving them with a moment of our time, because we've spoken about it before. The most important thing to someone is your time. Giving them your time and your attention leaves them with a lasting impression that somebody else may not have. And this comes back to networking. So, B&I was the perfect example. I'd say to every member in that room, please don't think of visitors as potential members. Like, don't try and sell them on the idea of B&I. Think of them as your potential customer and think of how you can help that customer meet 30 individuals that are also looking for business and will help them find business. Get it out of you and move it back into them. And how are we going to help them? And there is a big difference in there, because when we're looking for our ideal client, and we didn't exercise last podcast around our little ray of sunshine. So great, we know how to find our ideal client. But what we then want to do with our ideal clients is transition them into raving fans, because raving fans are those buyers that meet a real estate agent that gives them that extra 2 minutes of time, even if they don't buy that property, and then they tell their mum and that mum uses the real estate agent. Or that person, I had a call from a client today, and he goes, I'm just so grateful. I'm going to tell everybody to use your service. That is a raving fan, and that is not a money transaction. That has nothing to do. And this gentleman I'd done free contract review for. So there was no money exchange in that. It was a trust and it was a human interaction, because I'd given him my time and I'd given him my attention. So sometimes this is where we can get a little lost, because the big picture is the client or the money or whatever it is. But if we can keep it really simple and change our mindsets that any person you bump into on the street could be your potential client, who then could turn into your raving fan, it changes the dynamic a little bit.
It does. I think you could probably simplify it that little bit further, right? Because you can, and everything that Kiani's just mentioned there is absolutely spot on. You could take it one step further and go a little bit biblical on this, right? And just treat people as you would like to be treated. If you just did that, right? Chances are people are going to go, this guy or this girl, they're pretty cool. Maybe we want to do business with them, right? Because we all get judged on those two filters, gang, the EQ, the IQ. Are we good people? Do we know what we're doing? And if you're really genuinely wanting to create raving fans, then you absolutely just need to treat people as you would want to be treated if you were in their hands as a customer. It can just be as simple as that, gang. And when we're talking about the humanization of all of this, right, you can go one of two ways. You know, there is a perfectly legitimate argument for treating clients as commodities if you're going to go down the volume play, right? I get it, right? And it's a valid business model. You just got to understand that you're just going to need to make sure that volume's there at all times, because there's no way known that you're going to be getting much of a return from many of those clients. Your churn of clientele is going to actually be really, really high. Now, reverse that script. I believe, Kiani, that there is such a thing as going too far. I speak to a number of people that are amazing human beings, right? And they want to do everything right by their clients, and, you know, they want to shine their shoes, and, you know, and they want to iron their clothes and want to do all this sort of amazing things. And there is such a thing as going too far the other way, because that can damage credibility just as much, right?
Absolutely.
So we need to make sure, team, that there is that little bit of a balance when it comes to that ideal client. But we can't. It's so easy when we're trying to play catch up from a COVID time, and you know, interest rates rising, costs of everything's rising, right? So there is a little bit more pressure on that P&L to do well. But I think that we can sometimes cost ourselves way too much money in getting this bit wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And there needs to be a line. You as an individual, and this is where it comes back to the person side of it, the human side of it, is as a business owner, as an employee, as you are in your business world, there does need to be boundaries, and you need to be clear with those boundaries. And that really does also lean into our self-worth and our self-gratification of, are we doing this to help them, or are we doing this to make us feel better?
Absolutely.
And that fine line, because time is money as well. So you need to value your time, and how much time are you putting into making yourself feel better as opposed to giving them what they need.
100%. And talking about giving them what they need, right? I think the other ridiculous example of this, which I feel it's probably actually counterproductive from a cost efficiency point of view, are all these bullshit, cheesy client gifts that we see knocking around every 5 minutes, right? I go to any agency or any business, and they've got this, you know, this client sort of welcome gift, or, you know, congratulations, you know, congratulatory gift of some description. And I swear down, 8 or 9 out of 10 of those officers that have those gifts are taking the piss out of those gifts before they've given them, right? They're sort of going, oh, we're giving this bullshit gift. Or, you know, I used to refer to the old school bottle of red wine that we used to put a little label on, because then it would be a keepsake apparently. But it even attempted to try some of that wine, you wouldn't even put it into your spag bol, right? It's that shit. You know, and I think it resembled more bloody kombucha than it did red wine. It was that like fermented, right? And the amount, and team, if you're one of these businesses that has these bullshit gifts, have a think to yourself, would I want to receive that as a human? Like, would I value that as a human being on the other end of it? Because chances are you wouldn't. Not in a million years, would you? Now, I had to put a bit of context around that. I was having a conversation with a good friend and mentor of mine, and no doubt we'll have him on the show at some stage, called Rick Rushton. And he very, in a very, very simplistic way, asked the question, you know, are we providing service for the sake of it, or are we actually caring for our customers? Because so much of the service that we provide, and I sort of contextualize for it, so much of the service that we provide is very superficial. It is to just put a little bow on the transaction, sometimes literally, and see them off on their merry way. Do we honestly feel that is, one, going to help the customer, but two, create some sort of deep and meaningful impact that shows that we care, when we compare a stupid gift to meeting them at the property with a set of keys, opening the door from them and welcoming them into their new home.
Yeah, you're so spot on.
And that's the human piece, right? And I think, back in the day, when I'm thinking about it back in the day, like, and I was doing a fair volume, I probably felt guilty to that, where I would get the transaction, make sure that they were safe as houses, make sure they're sweet as a nut, give them a call and see if they had any dramas or needed any help with anything or anything like that. That was me showing them that I cared. But I was perhaps a little bit absent in my physical being when I was sort of showing that aftercare to some clients. Ironically, I was waiting at the front of Cal's kindy yesterday, and one of the other mums goes, "You used to work at blah, didn't you?" And I went, "I knew I recognized you. I sold her first home like eight years ago or some shit like that." And one of the other parents said, "Oh, was it a nice home?" She goes, "No, it was a dump, but it was my first home." And I was cool with that. and it was one of those ones where I knew I remembered her purely because of the fact that it was hers and her friend's first home, and we were having more banter more than anything else because they were shitting themselves through the process, and I was like taking the piss, and we're having a laugh and all that sort of stuff. But I think she was one of the early ones where I let down my professional barriers and was like, I'm just going to help this chick as Andy, and go on from there. She was actually a really good lesson back in the day around that. So team, you got to think about how you would want to be treated. Would you really want that stupid cheese board that you end up spending a load of money on because you want it engraved and all that sort of shit, right?
Yeah,
100%. Waste the money.
I got a cheese board from my bookkeeper last year, and I'm an entertainer. I love cheese boards, but it didn't. You do
love a bit of cheese. You do love a bit of cheese. Yeah.
It didn't give me any kind of loyalty to go back and use their service if their service was not good.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it would not have swayed my decision if they weren't performing, and I'm not saying that they weren't, but if they weren't performing, that cheese board would not have been enough for me to go, I'm going to stay anay.
No, it would have just reminded you that they're flogs.
Well, maybe I won't put cheese on it anymore.
It doesn't
not worthy of my cheese. No,
it's not. Yeah, exactly.
This is the point of it. Like, what is it that you are trying to prove by giving the gift? Because I guarantee you it's not going to make them want to stay, especially if you do a bad job. And yes, great that they remember who you are. Or I remember one company that I worked at, we used to send magnets with little pads to stick on the fridge and happy birthday things that would get sent out. And it's a crock. I don't want that ugly on my fridge. No, thank you. It's not something that people are going to remember you by. Yes, it's great to stay remembered, but it's the human, and it is hard. I get it. We've been through COVID. We can't always do the face-to-face thing, but you're right. Even a phone call is that meaningful interaction. And it's a meaningful interaction. It's not a transaction. It's not I have to do this. It's I get to do this because I've just had this client. There are people out there that are dying for clients. So maybe rethink the tacky gift and give them your time or your attention, or give them a meaningful interaction that's going to make them think about you later, not a shitty cheese platter or a bloody ugly magnet that's going to stick on your fridge.
Yes, and we're pigs to that, because again, we'll disguise it as efficiency when we really just can't be arsed.
Really. And also too, you're right, it costs money. The P&L cannot afford to be sending out shitty magnets when we're not having client success or whatever it might be. If anything, when you're looking at what needs to go from a bottom line perspective, make your staff pick up the phone and have a conversation with them and get rid of the gift.
Oh, look, I think the easiest example at this time of the year is how many people are spending money on calendars at the minute. How many people are spending money on these calendars that they're going to send out to all and sundry to stick on their fridge and so on and so forth. I know for a fact that it held no influence whatsoever when I went into a listing presentation and I looked at the fridge and I saw competitor A, competitor B, competitor C on the side, competitor D down in the bottom corner somewhere because it had slipped because the magnet was shit, right? And I'd look at him and it'd put a little smile on my face, because I know that one, it would have cost them an arm and a leg, but two, it had zero sway as to whether they were going to get the business or not. Zero. Now, you can call it branding, but I would argue that there are better, more meaningful, more impactful ways of branding as opposed to just putting a keepsake on a bloody fridge, right? And you're seeing variations on a theme right now where you got some people that are doing useful contacts, which is a little bit better, I guess. I've seen a couple of people try and do different stuff like times tables because they think that that's going to hold appeal to kids. But let's face it, how many kids look at that shit anyway? Let's be honest. And that would have cost 4 figures comfortably, if not 5, once you consider distribution and whatnot, right?
It's a killer these days.
What could you have done with, say, for example, if you'd have spent $2,500 on that, and we're getting really practical here, which I like, which is good, Tim, because that's part of this podcast, right? We want to make sure we bring some practicality. Yeah. What happens if you'd have taken that $2,500, spent $1,500 on it on a professional video shoot, creating maybe 3 pieces of cornerstone content, and by cornerstone I mean forever green, will last you a while content that actually allows you an opportunity to show who you are as a human whilst also representing your credibility as a professional. And then the distribution cost would have been 0 because you just put them up on your own socials and all that sort of stuff. You've then got $1,000 spare, which you would then, if you wanted to, spend like 1/5 of that on distribution digitally. Probability says, gang, that you're likely to hit more of a note with your clients by doing that, as opposed to sticking a stupid fridge magnet in a letterbox. Yeah.
And it's the world we live in. You know, as I said, kids are doing timetables on iPads. People are looking for houses on phones. So why put, and your example was perfect. The fact that you're sitting there means that these 4 other buggers that have had their shot because they've got the magnet for a reason. So they've had their turn, didn't stick around because it's meaningless. So you're there as a 5th time runner-up, but something that is educational, that will make an impact, that will last forever. You know, I'm even talking like send them a FaceTime video, like a video yourself and send it to them or something like that. It doesn't have to be massive, but you're right. From a dollar perspective, $2,500 on fridge magnets as opposed to, and video messaging is so perfect at the moment, topical, and it's proven that it works.
And it's easier. Like, that's the other thing, right? Why the fuck make life hard for yourself? Like, why?
Natural behind the camera.
Look, and you know, and you can argue, but I'm shit behind a camera and in front of a camera, blah, 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 blah. And I get all that, team. But ultimately, you got to be in front of people. Ultimately, the camera is just another person. It's just another person done however many 100 or 1,000, hopefully, times. Really is 0 difference between you in front of a camera and you in front of a human, unless your ego's getting in the way and you spend way too much time watching your own videos.
Oh yeah, don't watch them.
Don't watch them. Do not watch them.
Push it out.
Do not watch it. Now, I want to talk a little bit, when we talk about our ideal clients, our ideal consumers, and we talk about the humanizing of it. We talked about in one of our last episodes around that little ray of sunshine. I want to relate it to attracting talent into our business as well. I've had a number of people hit us up with this recruitment challenge, you know, the whole great resignation thing and all that sort of stuff, which I think is an excuse for a lot of people, when the reality is, no, you just didn't treat them well enough, basically. Let's put it that way. We need to have a think about how we can humanize the recruitment process, because right now, if you are struggling to attract and retain talent, more to the point, then there has to be some part of your business or all of your business where you are treating your staff as commodities, as opposed to you, or you're not showing enough of the human part of you or your business in order to make them feel actually truly connected to the organization, right? Yeah. Kiani, what's your experiences around that?
I love that so much, because recruitment is hard every day of the week, and it's good to focus on recruitment, but you're right, we need to focus on retention where we will find success. Because I mean, in my business, I know that every time I hire a new staff member, outside of the fees, if I pay a recruiter or seek fees or however they come across my desk, I know that 3 months of their salary I have to absorb, because that's how long it's going to take for them to get up and running, learn the systems, understand the processes, and really get things moving. So I need to be prepared that from my P&L that I can afford to lose 3 months of their salary. And that's a that's a big chunk for some sellers and for some businesses to take on. Recruitment is important, and I think it's really like, you know, I've implemented some really cool things in our business to understand the person, how they work, how they tick, how they communicate, how I communicate with them, how I can manage them, all those kinds of things. And we've got this beautiful little template that shows us where we all sit. But as a small business, I mean, I never had that luxury back in the day. And it's very easy to get the hiring process wrong. But you're right. It's not about the commodity of the individual. It's about your job and your role and your responsibility in that business. If it is managing staff, then it's up to you to train them and and nurture them in some way, shape or form, because retention is where it is. That it's going to save you money to retain staff as opposed to the churn and the burn and then having to pay again and losing staff. And it's the process. It's rough. So I mean, I've had some crappy times and experiences with it, and I think I've spoken about this before. But yeah, I think the focus just needs to shift a little bit.
I reckon, you know, because we talk about the external, right, the customer and that ideal client as a customer, but we really need to make sure that we take a holistic view of our business when it comes to how we are treating the humans around us, right? And I think, team, if you get anything from this episode, I would highly encourage and hope that this might give you a little bit of a nudge to maybe reflect on how you are treating the humans externally outside of your business, i.e. your customers, but also the humans internally inside your business as well. And maybe have a think and a feel about how you can perhaps just alter your service, your customer service, because our team, if you're a leader, your team are your customers to a degree, right? As well as your customers being your customers, your team are they're probably your biggest customers, because without them, you're nothing, right? You ain't gonna get to service many customers if you've not got any team members looking after.
And your raving fans as well, because if they don't believe in the product, if they don't genuinely wholeheartedly back what it is that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, which they're doing for you, then they're already outputting half of what they possibly could. And as we know, if we're doing something we love, it's felt and it's attracted and it's received and receptive to others. Whereas if we are treating our staff unlike we wish to be treated, there is a potential that they're not invested in the product or invested in the business or the service or you as a leader. And if that's the case, then there's a real misalignment of values there, which is then going out to all of your customers and all of your, clients and the next level, and then that's going radiate. It's a ripple effect. And it starts here. It starts with us. We are the leader. We need to lead as we wish to be led. Then we need to pass on to our staff, which, yes, they're exactly like our customers because they are then representing us, and so forth and so forth.
Absolutely. And that segues into the last part of what we wanted to talk about today, which is how effectively are we utilizing our networks when it comes to attracting our ideal clients, when it comes to attracting customers, when it comes to attracting people that we may want to bring into our business. Now, I've mentioned this on one or two occasions. Team Mills is very much the queen of networking and utilizes her networks better than most people that I've seen. It's quite insane if you get to have a look under the hood of how she operates her networks. And I'd encourage you that you try to at some stage. But Kiani, what have been and I'll ask you probably for your sort of top 2 or 3 sort of indicators, barometers that people can take away to see if they are actually utilizing their networks as effectively as they could be doing. And we'll go back to external. We'll talk about those ideal customers. How do you utilize your networks as effectively as you do?
That's a really, really good question. And I think it shifted a lot, because as we start business, we are quite insular and we only know what we know. And then as our pool kind of grows and our pond grows a little bit, the shift for me happened when someone actually explained to me or used an example, and they said, look, everyone that you know, including yourself, potentially has at least maybe like 250 connections. And we can talk about Facebook as an example. So school friends, family, relatives, past co-workers, whatever they might be. 250 people, right? I've got 250. Of my 250, each one of them then has 250, and so forth and so forth. It's that ripple effect, right? And when we talk about our ideal client, every single one of them could potentially be our ideal client. So that just made my little tiny brain be like, oh, here I am thinking that, it's just me in this world. And, the only people that are going to see my business are people that, friends of mine, or, people down the road, or that walk past the office, or whatever it might be. My mind just went, holy bejesus. And I'm quite blessed that the service I'm in, it's a necessity. You can't buy a house without a conveyancer, so you need me. But I didn't think about it that way. So changing my mind helped me interact differently with my ideal clients and attract my ideal clients differently, because everything I put out for the masses. Instead of just trying to really nail what I thought my ideal client was, which was like mum and dad, kids, both professionals, both, somewhat business savvy and looking to buy their family home. So that was my ideal client. So I kept going for that. And then there was me going, so once I'd kind of gone, open up, then I kind of broke that down a bit and I went, hold on. We've got first home buyers. We've got families. Then we've got investors. Then we've got multiple investors. Then we've got people who want to rent vest. So we need to consider their cash flow. And I ended up having about 10 ideal clients. So that to me was a really pivotal part, because it went from going, I have one and I'm really insular and this is all I'm doing, to going, holy Scheisenhausen, 250 connections plus 250 connections times 250 connections. Holy bejesus, I have a entirety. So it became that abundance mindset, and it made everything seem a little bit more possible.
I love that abundance, Mark. Before I make comment on the amazing stuff that you just said, can everybody just take note of the effort that Kiani put in to not swear during that short little section there? I thought that was incredible. I mean, granted, it made her sound like an old nana, but I got totally distracted then for a second when I heard the holy Scheisenhausen. I'm like, are you 30 odd? Are you 70 odd? But back to what you said, right? So you're absolutely spot on. And we think that we might only have like one or two ideal clients, when in fact, if we were to actually take half a step back and look and go, right, who could our ideal client be? Who could it be? Then, and you were to really create those avatars, you write down what those avatars who they are, what they represent, and so on and so forth. You could then mix and match half of those ones as well, just as a secondary source.
Absolutely. And I'd highly recommend you do that little ray of sunshine on every single one of them, and all along your brain will be like, holy bejesus. And this is where it comes into that. There is no such thing as competition in business. There is enough for everybody. We need to stop trying to compete and try and work together. We can all work together. There is enough of that. And that really shifted, especially in a networking sense. It's no longer about what can I get? It's about, how can I help?
Absolutely. What I really like about that is when you talk about there is an abundance and therefore, we can all get on it. I reckon that a lot of organizations, a lot of small business, a lot of sole traders, they will not take full advantage of their network through fear of competitors finding out what it is that they do, right? And that's where we need to take our ego and just put it back in the closet, team, because ultimately, if you are providing a service, like, for example, you are selling a house, you are fixing a pergola, you are writing an ad or whatever the heck it is, right? Your competitors have got the same A to B as you, right? Same A to B. Stop cutting your nose off to spite your face because of the fact that you don't want them to find out what it is that you do, when probability says they probably do 9/10 of what it is that you do. And the real true effectiveness of your network comes through who you are as a human and how you alter the dynamic of the network via who you are and the energy that you bring. No one else can do that shit. That's all on you. And I think in order for us to actually make the most of our network, we've got to add ourselves into said network wholly and solely.
Oh my freaking God. Yes, that is so true. And it's funny because I say to my kids all the time, you are not special. Like, there is nothing special about you, especially when they're going, I deserve this, I do that. I'm like, no, you're not special. Go and brush your teeth, just like everybody else.
Far from it. Yeah, go on, piss off. Yeah.
You shouldn't have to brush your teeth. There's nothing special. Same as business. Your business is not special. What you do is not special. In some instances, yes, there's very rare cases where
unicorns.
And a bit. Yep, the unicorns, they're there. But for us, for you and me, mate, I'm not special. There is nothing different about what I do. Someone else is doing it in a similar way, shape or form. But what is special is no one else has got me. No one else has got what it is that you give them. And this is the human part. Everyone will do something different. And I think a lot of people really kind of play on the fact that I've got one referral partner and that's it. I want to use one conveyancer and that's it. I'm like, well, that's fantastic, but you've got 100 different clients. Do you think you're doing a client's a service by fitting them with the same person every single time? Or do you think maybe there might be a personality clash in some instances that may come back and bite you in the ass? So from a networking perspective as well, I think it's really important that we have an array of options, because our clients, maybe there is 50% of clients that are quite generic, quite vanilla circumstances, and they'd just be happy with a good service. Amazing. But then I might have a female that only wants to work with females. So if my option, then I'm doing that woman a very big disservice. I might have person that needs someone that wants to go to wants to go to her house, and I've got someone that's online and digital only. You've got to consider what is best for the, not just the majority, but for everybody. So look at it a little bit more holistically. Remove that notion that you are keeping things to yourself or not wanting to share or whatever it might be. You're right. The nose, despite the face little comment thing, was absolutely perfect, because if we do look at it from a bit of a holistic perspective, you shouldn't just have one referral partner. You should have options. So therefore, you have a bigger network because you can share. You're doing your clients a better service because they're getting what they need, not what you think. So I think it kind of all comes back around together, that it really is centered around the individual, because that is the unicorn. You are the unicorn.
100%. And if you don't have that versatility in your toolkit to be able to cater for those different circumstances, personalities, languages is a huge one, right? Languages is a huge one, because I know for a fact that especially within real estate, there is that concern of, the like will attract to like, and so on, when the truth is actually very, very different. However, if you haven't got the ability or the versatility to be able to interact with a potentially ideal client that really, really wants to work with you, but there's just a simple language barrier that is just giving them that little bit too much apprehension, then you are limiting how much business you can do. Whereas if you fear making that connection with someone within the industry that does talk a different language or whatever, that you could perhaps collaborate with, then ultimately we talk about customers pigeonholing professionals, but through our own behaviors, we don't half pigeonhole ourselves as well. And I think that if we were to look at that versatility piece and then have a look at our networks and our connections, just to see if we can just open that ideal client base up a little bit by having a little bit of versatility, bringing a little bit more of that abundance mindset into our game, then we will actually be paying a lot more attention to our target audience.
And we'll be retaining. Retention is so important. We don't want to be churning and burning in most of our industries. And then also too, when the storms weather, which they have been and they may be, this is when that raving fan will come out of the woodwork and go, I remembered you from this. And that's when you want to be remembered. So it does help steady the flow or the turbulence that can come from business, with the market, with the interest rates, with everything else that happens. If you're doing the right thing in more areas than just One, you're looking at it as a holistic viewpoint. Remember the ripple effect. It's bigger than just you. Consider everything. Be kind to everyone. It will come. Like it really will. It will come. It's the law of attraction.
Yeah, basically. So the last 40 odd minutes that you've listened to this, in summary, gang, don't be a dickhead. Be a nice human being, and as long as you know what you're doing, you'll be okay. But for God's sake, please pay attention to the human on the other end of the transaction.
And the ones don't forget the guys.
Yeah, and if you have a problem with that, just have a think about it this way. That one buyer that you didn't get back to because you felt like you didn't have time, and this used to freak me out. I used to put myself in that not fear, but it used to make me feel really self-conscious to make sure that I was doing the right thing by everyone. Because every time I spoke to someone, I went away thinking, shit, they've both got parents. I know that one of the parents is coming to the second inspection. They're probably going to bring another partner. Shit, they've probably lived somewhere as well. Chances are they live under a roof of some description. You know what I mean? It doesn't, and it's not hard to have that creep into your head and it gives you that accountability that makes you want to be a good human more often. So
you just need it to come back once. When it comes back once, you go, oh, that's it. But you need to hear it. You need to hear it and be like, a lot of the times we'll just be like, oh, great, thank you, and move on and keep going fast. But when it does come back, when that one person comes, oh, I was referred by so-and-so, or, when that synchronicity comes back around full circle, like stop for a minute and appreciate that and do exactly what you just did. Take note of everything that happened, because no doubt that is the cycle. That is the law of attraction. You've done something right. You've done something really right. So just follow that. Follow the line. Follow the little beautiful feeling, fuzzy feeling that comes from it.
Amazing. Hey, Kiani, I reckon we've taken up too much of these people's time. I think we've already got a song from you, which is good. And we've discovered that Kiani is 30-something on the outside and about twice that age on the inside. So we've all learned something here, team. We've all learned something.
Things too, by the sound of it. Really important.
Yeah, big time. Kiani, thank you so much. I love doing this thing with you, and hopefully some of you guys are still getting a bit of benefit. The early feedback that we've had as well, gang, by the way. My gosh, it's so heartening. It really, really is, because when you start this sort of stuff, you don't know whether you're just talking shit.
We are,
but within that shit, there is a couple of nuggets of gold, and there's been a number of you that have picked up on it. So we can't thank you enough for that early feedback and giving us that little nudge to say, look, we are going somewhere helpful with this, and please, if you can, share our little podcast around with other people that you feel might find use of it, might find some sort of solace in listening to, and follow us on the Instagram as well. Like, I know we're doing a little plug at the end here, but in that Instagram page, there are a couple of golden nuggets that are exclusive to Instagram, in particular from one half of this podcast, when she just has a little moment of inspiration. She bangs it down on a bit of an audio file, and it is exclusive to Instagram. So make sure you follow us on Instagram and DM us if you have anything that you want to say or want us to talk about. Kiani, thank you.
Amazing, as always. Thank you. Nana Kiani, peace out.
Take it easy, gang. Stay safe, healthy, happy. We'll chat to you next time.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are very grateful for your time, and we really hope that we've provided some value.
Follow us on Instagram if you've liked what you've heard, and if you have anything that you want us to talk about, things that might have been bugging you but you've not quite had the bottle to really bring it out into the open, send us a DM and we'll happily bring it to the table.